There are truths so old, so powerful, that when a man first hears them, it feels less like learning and more like remembering. I speak to you now of a wisdom preserved in silence for 4,000 years, wisdom that modern life has buried beneath noise, distraction, and endless striving. Long before cities rose and empires fell, long before men argued over theories and systems, wise teachers in ancient Ethiopia recorded laws of achievement that would later be echoed by every prosperous civilization. They understood that a man's success begins not with his circumstances, but with his inner command. You may feel that life has grown complicated, uncertain, chaotic, but the great secret is this. The answers you seek are not modern inventions. They are ancient. They are older than the world you live in, and they were hidden because the modern mind no longer knows how to listen for them. Imagine a scroll sealed for millennia, opened at last to a man who has struggled, failed, risen, and wondered why his efforts never match his potential. Inside that scroll lies a principle so simple and so direct that those unprepared for it overlook it entirely. Yet, it is the very principle that built kings, nations, and fortunes. Ask yourself why the world has grown restless, why men wake tired, work without purpose, and end each day with the same hollow feeling. It is because modern life replaced ancient guidance with movement, noise, and speed, but removed meaning. The Ethiopian sages warned that when a man loses the inner law, he loses everything built upon it. Think of what this means for you. All your disappointments, all the moments when the door seemed closed, all the times you felt life was withholding something essential. The truth is that nothing was withheld. You were simply disconnected from a wisdom designed to lead you, strengthen you, and prepare you to receive more. These scriptures teach that a man must first command his own attention before he can command his destiny. They teach that desire without direction is suffering, and that direction without faith is futility. They teach that a man becomes powerful the moment he masters the inner voice instead of allowing it to drift. Consider the weight of that revelation. 4,000 years ago, men understood what the modern world forgot. That thought is the first creation, action is the second, and destiny is the result of both. They wrote it down, not as poetry, but as law that governs the rise and fall of every individual. And here is the part most people overlook. This ancient knowledge was never lost accidentally. It was forgotten because material life grew louder, brighter, and more demanding. And as men chased comfort, they abandoned the discipline that reveals truth. When discipline goes, wisdom follows. And when wisdom disappears, life feels empty. If you have ever wondered why your potential feels greater than your results, why your mind speaks one dream while your life displays another, why you sense something calling you forward but cannot name it, this is why you have been living in a world that hid the very knowledge you needed most. But once you rediscover these ancient laws, the world no longer feels chaotic. Your mind no longer feels scattered. Your purpose no longer feels distant. Everything becomes aligned because the principles that governed achievement before history began still govern it today. The question now is simple. Will you open your mind to the wisdom that shaped civilizations, or will you continue living according to the broken patterns of modern life? The next few minutes may become the moment when you reclaim what the world has tried to bury, your clarity, your direction, your authority over yourself. Listen carefully, because what comes next is not merely information, it is a return to a truth older than nations, older than language, older than the struggles you face today. And once it enters your mind, it cannot be forgotten again. There is a law written in the oldest teachings of ancient Ethiopia that declares a man rises only when he commands his own attention. For attention is the gateway through which every other power must pass, and no man can build a strong life while his thought is scattered by the demands of a noisy world. You may believe you lack opportunity or strength, but what you truly lack in your weary moments is attention. For attention is the root of all mastery, and without it, the seeds of success cannot take hold. Modern life has scattered the focus of men to such a degree that they no longer feel the presence of their own inner authority. For the constant movement, noise, and distraction weaken the mind's ability to hold a single direction. A man who permits the world to pull at his senses from the moment he rises cannot expect to command his destiny. For destiny requires the quiet strength of a focused mind, and a focused mind requires the discipline of withdrawing one's attention from the world and placing it inward. The ancient sages spoke of inner hearing, which is the skill of listening to one's own thought without interference. For within every man there is a quiet voice that knows the next step he must take. Yet this voice is drowned beneath the clamor of modern life. Inner hearing does not require special talent. It requires stillness, and stillness requires the deliberate act of commanding your attention back from the world. Achievement begins with ordered thought, not movement. For movement without direction is wasted effort, and effort without thought produces exhaustion instead of progress. A man may labor for years and find himself no further along if he has not learned the first law. Attend first to your inner world, and the outer world will reflect the order you establish within. The Ethiopian sages taught that thought, when organized, becomes power, and power, when directed, becomes destiny. Attention is the gateway to power, for the mind that can hold a single thought without wavering becomes a force that circumstance cannot break. Carnegie possessed this power, for he trained himself from youth to hold one aim before his mind with such intensity that every decision fell naturally into place. Edison displayed it even more clearly, for he carried one idea in his mind for years, ignoring criticism and failure, because he refused to allow the world to distract him from the picture he had formed within. When a man allows the world to command his attention, his life collapses into confusion, for the mind that is ruled from without cannot build anything lasting. He becomes reactive, uncertain, and easily influenced. He loses the ability to think clearly, decide boldly, and act with conviction. For these qualities are born only in the man who governs his own attention. The distracted man drifts, the attentive man rises. When a man regains command of his inner attention, others notice a change that they cannot explain. For he moves with calmness, speaks with certainty, and carries a presence that suggests he knows where he is going. This calmness is not passivity, it is authority. It is the authority of a man who has withdrawn his attention from the world long enough to hear the truth within himself. Such a man appears unshaken, even in difficulty, because his mind no longer sways with every disturbance. If you wish to restore the mind's ability to hold a single direction, you must speak affirmations that strengthen your inner sight. My attention obeys my will. My thought follows my direction. I hold to one aim with clarity and confidence. These words, spoken with repetition, train the subconscious mind to support your focus, and once the subconscious becomes your ally, attention grows strong without effort. The ancient warning is as relevant today as it was 4,000 years ago. He who loses his attention loses his path. A man may possess talent, intelligence, or ambition, but if he loses his attention, he loses everything built upon it. Attention is the first law because it is the foundation of all other laws. No man can hold faith, form desire, build plans, or apply persistence while his attention is scattered. Reclaim your attention, and you reclaim your life. Now let us continue. In the oldest writings of ancient Ethiopia, preserved long before empires formed their borders or rulers carved their names into stone, there is a declaration older than any throne built by man. It says, "Every man is a king over his inner kingdom." This was not a metaphor to amuse the imagination. It was a law, an unchanging truth that any man may rise from obscurity when he grasps its weight. For kingship begins not upon a throne of wood or gold, but upon the throne of one's own thought. Modern men feel powerless because they have surrendered their inner rulership to outer approval. They move according to the opinions of strangers, the expectations of family, the judgments of critics, and the demands of their surroundings. They wait for signs, encouragement, recognition, and reassurance. They bow to the noise of the world instead of commanding their own minds, and a man cannot rise while bowing inwardly to everything around him. Ancient wisdom describes thought as the royal decree of destiny. What the mind declares repeatedly becomes the law that governs the man's life. If he declares weakness, weakness becomes his portion. If he declares doubt, doubt shapes his days. If he declares strength, strength emerges as his companion. The Ethiopian sages taught that a king rules through decree, not through emotion, and so must a man rule his life through thought, not through feeling. There is a principle the sages called enthroning the will, placing decision above emotion. A man's emotions may shift like sand in the wind, but his decisions must stand like stone. When decision rules, emotions follow. When emotion rules, decision collapses. The ancient kings were taught to act from decree, not from impulse, and the modern man who desires power must learn the same lesson. Choose first, feel second. Act from will, not from the storm of passing moods. Consider Abraham Lincoln in the darkest hours of crisis. The nation trembled under pressure, and advisors flooded him with doubt. Yet Lincoln showed an inner authority that few men possess. He did not rule according to his fear, nor did he surrender to the chaos around him. His mind remained enthroned. He carried a calm that seemed unreal in such a storm because he knew that when a man rules himself, the world cannot unseat him. Henry Ford, mocked for his ideas and opposed by men of greater wealth and influence, remained steady because his will, not public approval, held the throne. He did not permit rejection to dethrone him. He did not allow mockery to overrule his inner certainty. His success came from the kingship he maintained over his thought, long before the world accepted the value of his work. The Ethiopian writings warn that a divided mind dethrones itself. A man cannot rise while he thinks one thing today, another tomorrow, and a third the day after. A mind divided cannot rule. It cannot command. It cannot create. It cannot lead. It cannot even remain steady. The man who contradicts himself through shifting intention loses his authority, for no kingdom can be governed by confusion. Others begin to respect a man who rules himself consistently, even if they once doubted him. They sense firmness in his step, direction in his voice, and steadiness in his presence. The world instinctively follows the man who follows himself. When a man becomes self-governing, he becomes influential, not by force or demand, but by the strength of his inner posture. It is impossible to ignore the authority of a man who has taken his rightful place upon the throne of his own thought. Rebuilding inner kingship requires repeated decree. A king does not declare once, he declares daily. He reinforces law with repetition. So must a man reinforce his own identity. Each morning he must say, "My thought obeys my command. My command obeys my purpose." The subconscious mind receives these decrees as law and reorganizes the man's conduct, decisions, and habits accordingly. A man must speak his decrees aloud, not for others to hear, but for his own thought to recognize its commander. The spoken word carries power. It penetrates the subconscious with greater force than silent thought. And once the subconscious accepts the man as king, it brings him opportunities, ideas, and strength consistent with rulership. There is dignity that emerges when a man governs himself instead of drifting. It cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be imitated through appearance. It comes only to the man who has mastered his own mind. Others sense this dignity without explanation. They trust him, they admire him, they follow him, they confide in him, and often they fear to oppose him, for his certainty makes him immovable. But dignity must be earned through discipline. The throne of the inner kingdom is taken only by the man who accepts responsibility for every thought he permits, every emotion he allows to linger, every habit he tolerates, and every decision he postpones. Inner rulership is not a gift, it is a conquest. Ancient Ethiopian instruction gave men a simple path to reclaim kingship. Withdraw your attention from the world. Choose your purpose with clarity. Declare it with conviction. Repeat it with endurance. Act upon it with discipline. Correct yourself without delay. Stand firm without apology. These steps, though simple, separate the common man from the rising man. The common man tries to control the world. The rising man controls himself. And through that control, he influences the world without chasing it. A king does not beg for respect. He commands it by the steady force of his presence. Likewise, a man does not demand recognition. He earns it by ruling his thought and holding to his direction, even when the world does not yet understand him. This doctrine of inner kingship is the force that built every leader revered throughout history. It is the force that guided Lincoln's steadiness, Ford's confidence, Edison's persistence, Carnegie's ambition. Their minds ruled their lives, and their lives ruled their destiny. The world obeys the man who first obeys himself. The ancient kings knew this truth, and so did the men who shaped modern achievement. It is time you claim it for yourself. Now let us continue. There is an ancient teaching preserved in the Ethiopian scrolls that declares, desire is a message, but direction is the answer. And those who misunderstand this law spend their lives chasing the flame of desire without ever learning how to contain it, shape it, or direct it toward a purpose worthy of their power. Desire alone has ruined more men than failure. For desire without direction burns the spirit instead of brightening it. But when a man learns to shape desire into a chosen path, he becomes unstoppable, because he has aligned his inner fire with a definite course. Modern life has deceived men into thinking that desire itself is progress, as though wanting something with intensity equals movement. But the ancient sages taught that desire is only the beginning of wisdom, and without interpretation, it misleads the seeker. The world taught men to chase desires without understanding them, to pursue every spark without asking whether that spark belongs to the path of their true purpose. Most men exhaust themselves not because they desire too much, but because they direct nothing. The Ethiopian principle states that every desire must be shaped into a chosen path, for desire without direction is like a river without banks. It spreads thin, loses force, and cannot carry anything forward. But desire that is given a narrow channel becomes powerful enough to turn wheels, raise structures, and carve valleys through rock. The man who does not direct his desire wastes his strength. The man who directs his desire multiplies it. There is a great difference between longing and direction. Longing weakens a man, for it keeps him in a state of distance from the object he seeks. It stirs emotion without providing clarity. It causes him to imagine a future he never reaches because he has not chosen the road that leads to it. But direction strengthens a man, for it reduces longing to action. It transforms desire into movement. It gives purpose to effort, and it makes the future a matter of construction instead of fantasy. Carnegie understood the law of divine direction in his youth, long before wealth ever touched his hands. He chose one aim, to rise in his field, and he bound his desire to that aim with unyielding loyalty. His desire did not scatter across many ambitions. It drove him upward because he gave it direction. Every day, every choice, every association, every task aligned with the aim he had selected. His direction turned desire into destiny. Rockefeller displayed the same ancient wisdom. He did not yearn for many outcomes. He selected a single direction and committed himself to the path with an unwavering calmness. His desire, shaped by clarity, became a force that others could not break. For men who direct their desire never appear frantic or desperate. They appear steady, patient, and even quiet, for their inner certainty carries more power than outward motion. False desires drain a man's spirit because they have no root in his deeper purpose. They rise quickly, stir excitement, and fade just as quickly, leaving him weaker than before. A false desire creates restlessness, confusion, and discouragement. It fools a man into thinking he lacks discipline when in truth he lacks direction. And so he blames himself when he should blame the desire that was never meant to guide him. True desire energizes a man. It strengthens his resolve. It fills him with a quiet fire that grows instead of fading. It sharpens his decisions and makes sacrifice feel natural rather than painful. True desire is recognized by its endurance. It does not collapse under delay, nor does it vanish in difficulty. False desire screams for attention. True desire whispers steadily until the man is willing to follow it with devotion. Direction draws opportunity toward the man who possesses it. Just as a magnet draws iron, so does definiteness draw resources, allies, and ideas. Men without direction repel opportunity because opportunity cannot attach itself to drift. But the man who knows where he is going attracts the very conditions that make his path possible. His path may be long, but it is clear, and clarity invites provision. The ancient writings teach that he who directs his desire commands his life, for desire is the fire, and direction is the lamp. Without the lamp, the fire burns the man. With the lamp, the fire illuminates his path. Most men are burned by their own desires because they lack the lamp of direction. But the man who combines fire with structure becomes a builder of his own future. To align desire with purpose, you must speak affirmations that unify intention and action. Say within yourself, "My desire follows my purpose. My purpose guides my desire. I move with direction. I act with clarity. I am led by the aim I have chosen." These affirmations, when repeated, give the subconscious mind a command that cannot be ignored, and the subconscious will reorganize thought, emotion, and behavior to match this command. Repetition is the great tool of ancient wisdom. The Ethiopian sages repeated their affirmations morning and night, not out of superstition, but out of understanding. They knew that a man becomes what he repeats. A desire repeated without direction becomes longing. A desire repeated with direction becomes achievement. A direction repeated without doubt becomes destiny. The magnetic force the sages wrote about is not mystical. It is practical. When a man directs his desire, he moves with consistency. When he moves with consistency, he becomes predictable to opportunity. When he becomes predictable to opportunity, opportunity finds him. The world favors the man who moves with intention because intention produces stability, and stability produces progress. The ancient teaching states that direction is divine because it aligns man with the natural order of achievement. A river flows because it has a course. A tree grows upward because it knows its direction. A man succeeds because he selects one aim with devotion. The laws are the same across nature. Nothing thrives without direction. You must choose the path you intend to follow, bind your desire to it, and move forward with the steadiness of a man who knows that all power lies in the union of purpose and action. Do not chase every spark. Do not entertain every desire. Select the one aim that belongs to your highest calling and give yourself to it until it is fulfilled. Now let us continue. There is a teaching preserved in the ancient Ethiopian writings which declares, "A man becomes what he does daily." And no phrase carries a greater weight for the one who desires to rise. Modern men have forgotten this simple truth. They await inspiration, motivation, opportunity, or favorable conditions. But greatness bows only to the man who honors the discipline of sacred practice. It is not the occasional act that shapes destiny, but the daily act repeated with purpose. A man's future does not begin in the grand moments of decision. It begins in the small, quiet moments of daily conduct, where character is formed and power is gathered. You must recognize that modern men hope for change without daily practice, and this hope has left them exhausted. They wish for a stronger mind without training it. They wish for clarity without reflection. They wish for confidence without discipline. They wish for success without order. But ancient wisdom teaches that hope without daily practice is the seed that never takes root. Desire may begin the journey, but discipline completes it. The Ethiopian sages taught that consistency is a sacred act, not a routine. To them, repetition was not a mechanical habit, but an offering, a declaration to the subconscious that a man has chosen his aim with seriousness. When a man repeats a practice daily, he is announcing to his inner world that he intends to rise, and the subconscious responds by reorganizing his thoughts, emotions, and actions in the direction of that rise. Sacred practice is a conversation with one's own destiny. The first hour and the last hour of the day govern all the others. In the first hour, the mind is fresh, the world is silent, and the subconscious stands ready to receive instruction. In the last hour, the mind is vulnerable, open, and impressionable. The man who governs these 2 hours governs his day, and the man who governs his day governs his year. Most men begin their mornings in haste and end their evenings in distraction, and the cost of this carelessness is far greater than they know. You must guard your mornings as a sacred appointment with your own future. Before the world intrudes, you must sit with your written purpose, speak it aloud, read it, feel it, affirm it, command your mind to obey it. This is not ritual for its own sake. It is the forging of inner authority. When the subconscious hears your purpose at the start of the day, it spends the rest of the day shaping your conduct accordingly. Likewise, your evenings must be governed by reflection, not distraction. The Ethiopian sages taught that the mind absorbs the final thoughts of the day into the deepest chambers of consciousness, feeding on them throughout the night. If these thoughts are chaotic, your spirit wakes dull and weakened. If they are directed, your spirit wakes strengthened and focused. The last hour is the hinge upon which the next day swings, and therefore it must be treated as sacred. Edison exemplified the power of sacred practice through his relentless devotion to experimentation. Each day he organized his work, tested his ideas, recorded his notes, and refined his methods. He did not skip his practice when he felt tired. He did not abandon his practice when experiments failed. He did not postpone his practice when the world mocked him. Sacred practice made him invincible because it kept him moving forward even when progress was invisible. Henry Ford also understood the ancient law of daily discipline. He refined his ideas day by day, eliminating what was unnecessary, strengthening what was essential, and improving what could be improved. His success was not born from sudden brilliance, but from the repeated act of thinking, planning, refining, and testing. His practice was steady, quiet, and consistent, just as the sages taught. The Ethiopian writings teach that sacred daily practice aligns a man's life with his chosen direction. Without practice, desire collapses. Without practice, purpose fades. Without practice, identity weakens. But with practice, everything strengthens. The mind becomes orderly. The will becomes firm. The spirit becomes light. The conscience becomes clear. The future becomes visible. As your practice strengthens, others begin to trust, admire, and follow you. They see a steadiness in your conduct that cannot be imitated. They see that you move with purpose while others wander. They sense that your life is guided by an inner force they cannot name. They begin to respect your presence, confide in your judgment, and rely upon your steadiness. Sacred practice creates influence, and influence draws opportunity. Affirmations for structuring the day must be spoken with seriousness. I govern my day with purpose. I rise with clarity and act with discipline. My time obeys my direction. My thoughts follow my command. My daily practice builds the man I intend to become. These affirmations are the tools of ancient mastery. They train the subconscious to follow the path you have chosen. They steady the mind, quiet the emotions, and strengthen the will. The Ethiopian teaching states that daily order invites divine favor. This was not superstition. It meant that life aligns itself with the man who is aligned within. When a man's days are disordered, opportunities cannot find him. When a man's days are disciplined, opportunities appear because he is prepared to receive them. The world favors the man whose daily conduct is consistent with his aim. There is strength that grows in the man who honors his sacred discipline. His posture straightens, his eyes sharpen, his voice deepens, his step becomes measured, his spirit becomes calm. He is no longer thrown off course by every disturbance, for his direction is renewed each morning and reaffirmed each night. He becomes the master of his time, and the master of his time becomes the master of his life. The world believes that wisdom is hidden in secrets, systems, or special knowledge. But the Ethiopian texts reveal that wisdom is found in the day lived with purpose, the day lived with awareness, the day lived with discipline. The man who can govern a single day can govern a lifetime, and the man who cannot govern a day will lose himself year after year. If you desire a different future, build a different day. Structure your mornings, direct your hours, review your evenings, repeat your practice, guard your purpose, discipline your conduct, and the next year will obey the order of your days. A truth preserved in ancient Ethiopia declares that before a man receives more, he must cleanse what governs him within. For the mind cannot hold strength when it is clouded by fear, resentment, and doubt. A vessel cannot be filled with new water while it still holds the dust of the old, and the same is true of the human spirit. The sages taught that every man carries within him hidden refuse, old disappointments, old injuries, quiet fears that block the passage of power. Modern life encourages men to gather more knowledge, more possessions, more tasks, but it rarely teaches them to clear the inner space required for greatness to enter. Fear is the first dust that must be removed. Fear closes the gates of the mind and causes a man to doubt what he knows to be true. The ancient writings describe fear as a shadow that hides the path, not a barrier upon it. Once the shadow is exposed, it dissolves, but a man must have the courage to bring it into the light of his own awareness. Resentment is a heavier dust, for it hides itself beneath pride. Resentment binds a man to those who injured him, and instead of freeing him, it ties his spirit to the very events he wishes to forget. The Ethiopian teachers warned that resentment steals attention, and a man who wastes his attention on old wounds cannot direct it toward new creation. Self-doubt is the dust that weakens the foundation of every hope. It enters quietly, speaks softly, and spreads through the mind until the man believes less in himself than in his obstacles. Ancient wisdom teaches that doubt is not a truth but a habit of thinking, and habits can be uprooted by the repetition of opposite command. Purification is not punishment, it is preparation. Before a man can receive more responsibility, he must prove that he can govern the thoughts that shape his character. The Ethiopian writings say, "The mind must be made clean before the man is made strong, for strength rises from clarity. No man can build upon a foundation he cannot see." Lincoln rose through purification. Before he carried the burden of a nation, he carried the burden of his own doubts. He met them in silence, examined them without fear, and through this introspection, he removed the weaknesses that once clouded his spirit. He cleansed his motives, strengthened his will, and became a man capable of leading millions. Carnegie purified his motives before he ever built his empire. He removed bitterness from his spirit by releasing envy and resentment toward those who possessed what he lacked. He understood that envy is poison to ambition, for it takes the eyes away from one's own path and places them on the fortune of others. Purification freed him to rise without burden. Modern life clouds a man's inner vision by filling his mind with noise, urgency, and distraction. The sages warned that a man who surrounds himself with movement loses sight of his direction, for movement without reflection creates inner fog. Clarity requires stillness. Power requires reflection. Greatness requires inward cleansing. The process of inner cleansing begins with stillness, for stillness reveals what is hidden beneath the noise. In stillness, a man sees his fears without flinching, his resentments without excuses, and his doubts without disguise. Stillness brings truth, and truth brings strength, for no man can confront what he refuses to see. Truthfulness is the second act of purification. A man must speak honestly to himself about the thoughts that weaken him. He must name his fears, write his doubts, uncover his motives, and bring all inner disorder into the open. Truthfulness releases power because falsehood steals power. The man who lies to himself cannot command himself. Written confession, as the Ethiopian sages taught, is the act of removing thoughts from the mind by placing them on paper. When a man writes his fears, they cease to command him. When he writes his resentments, they begin to loosen their grip. Writing removes what the mind tries to conceal, and once exposed, these thoughts lose their authority. Others perceive a purified man even before he speaks. They see cleaner eyes, eyes no longer clouded by old wounds. They sense calmer presence, presence no longer disturbed by fear. They feel deeper certainty, certainty gained from removing inner conflict. Purification renews a man's spirit, and renewed spirit transforms his appearance. Affirmations that remove old thought and strengthen new identity must be spoken with steady conviction. I release what weakens me. I renounce what binds me. I cleanse my mind of fear, resentment, and doubt. I make my spirit clean so that strength may enter. These affirmations sweep the inner chamber clean, creating room for power to dwell. The Ethiopian truth states, "The vessel must be clean before it can hold honor." A man may desire greatness, wealth, or influence, but if his inner vessel remains filled with conflicting thought, he cannot carry the weight of his own ambition. Clearing the vessel is not optional. It is law. It is the requirement for rising. Purification is not achieved in a single moment. It is a discipline. Each morning, a man must clear his mind of yesterday's residue. Each evening, he must release the small irritations and quiet fears that collected throughout the day. Purification must be repeated until the mind becomes light, steady, and ready for greater purpose. A purified mind becomes a clear channel through which purpose can flow. Ideas appear with greater strength. Decisions come with greater clarity. Confidence grows without effort. The man no longer battles himself inside. And when the inner battle ends, the outer battle becomes easy. The ancient scrolls teach that when a man purifies his inner world, life purifies his outer world. The wrong people drift away. The right opportunities appear. The correct ideas rise to the surface. Purification removes obstacles not by force, but by removing the inner tangles that attracted them. A man must not fear purification, for purification is the birth of renewal. It is the shedding of an old skin, the removal of old chains, the clearing of old burdens. When the inner world becomes clean, the man becomes strong, and when he becomes strong, he becomes ready for new responsibility. You must cleanse your thoughts now so that the ancient wisdom may take root. Do not attempt to rise while carrying the dust of yesterday. Clean the mind, steady the spirit, lift the heart, and prepare the vessel to receive honor. The final law found in the Ethiopian scriptures declares that wisdom is not learned, it is returned to, for the truth that lifts a man has always lived within him, waiting for silence, waiting for discipline, waiting for the moment when he becomes willing to hear what the noise of modern life has buried beneath layers of distraction. Modern life has disconnected men from timeless truth, not by malice, but by speed. The world urges them to move quickly, think quickly, speak quickly, decide quickly, and in that haste they lose the inner rhythm required to hear the laws that shape their ancestors. The Ethiopian sages taught that a hurried mind cannot rise, for wisdom requires stillness and attention. The ancient teaching says a man must walk the path within before he can walk the path in the world. Most men reverse this order. They try to build outward success without first building inward command. They try to direct circumstances without directing thought. They try to lead others without leading themselves. Such attempts collapse, for the outer world obeys the inner law, not the reverse. The path within is the road a man walks when he closes his eyes, withdraws his attention from the world, and listens for the voice of purpose. That voice does not shout. It does not force itself upon him. It waits. It waits for stillness, for sincerity, for discipline. Once a man hears it, he cannot forget it, for it speaks with the authority of truth. The Ethiopian sages believed a man is not taught wisdom. He awakens to it. They wrote, "The truth enters him when he becomes ready for it, not when he searches for it. For the act of searching without purification leads a man in circles, but the act of preparing himself allows truth to enter naturally. Wisdom is not in the world, it is in the man." There exists an unbroken chain from the ancient teachers to the modern achievers who unknowingly followed the same inner laws. Lincoln, Carnegie, Ford, Edison, none studied these ancient texts, yet each obeyed the principles written within them. Their greatness came not from chance, but from alignment with the timeless patterns of thought, decision, and purpose. Lincoln walked the path within when he examined himself with brutal honesty, removed doubt, and strengthened conviction. His leadership emerged not from circumstance, but from inner clarity. He aligned himself with truth, and once aligned, he carried the weight of a nation with a steady spirit. Carnegie walked the path within by forming a definite purpose in youth and holding to it with unwavering loyalty. His rise came not from luck, but from inner obedience. He lived according to the law of definite direction, the same law the Ethiopian sages taught. Direction shapes desire, and desire shapes destiny. Ford walked the path within by believing in his vision long before the world believed in him. His strength did not come from invention, but from inner certainty. For certainty is the first material of creation. His work unfolded because his mind was prepared to persist where others surrendered. Edison walked the path within by mastering attention, holding one idea for years, refining it, testing it, failing, and returning again with the same clarity. His success flowed from inner law, not outer chance. The scriptures teach that persistence is the child of purpose, and Edison embodied this truth fully. To reclaim the ancient path, a man must rebuild his inner world in 5 steps: decision, attention, direction, discipline, and purification. Decision sets the aim. Attention gathers power. Direction channels desire. Discipline sustains motion. Purification removes the inner obstacles that weaken the man. These 5 steps form the ancient path of power. When a man begins walking this path, others feel a change in him long before results appear. His gaze steadies, his voice deepens, his movements gain intention, his presence becomes calm. People cannot explain why he feels different. They only sense that he has returned to something powerful, something ancient, something certain. Strength becomes visible in his posture, not as pride, but as steadiness. Clarity becomes visible in his decisions, not as haste, but as calm certainty. Purpose becomes visible in his conduct, not as ambition, but as directed energy. Those around him instinctively begin to follow, trust, and even rely on him. The ancient writings declare that a man who walks by inner law moves with the force of truth behind him. Truth gives him endurance when he faces difficulty. Truth gives him courage when he encounters doubt. Truth gives him poise when others panic. Truth gives him patience when results come slowly. Truth gives him dignity when success arrives. Affirmations sealing the return to inner wisdom must be spoken with the tone of a man reclaiming his inheritance. Say, I return to the ancient law, I walk the path within. My thought is clean, my purpose is clear, my attention obeys my will, my direction strengthens my spirit, my discipline guides my days, my inner law shapes my destiny. These affirmations align the mind with wisdom older than nations. They remind the subconscious of the truth forgotten by the modern world. Success is not created by outward striving, but by inward command. Once the subconscious accepts this truth, it begins reshaping the man's thought, habits, and character to match it. A man who returns to ancient wisdom reshapes his next year, for his days become disciplined, his decisions become accurate, his purpose becomes definite, and his confidence becomes unshakable. The next decade is transformed because his character is transformed. His legacy begins to take shape, not through chance, but through alignment with eternal law. The Ethiopian teaching states, a man who returns to the ancient path becomes a master of himself, and the man who masters himself becomes the master of his circumstances, his opportunities, and his destiny. The world obeys the one who obeys the inner laws that govern all achievement. The closing command from the ancient scrolls is simple. Begin the return now. Do not postpone. Do not delay. Do not wait for a more convenient time. The wisdom of 4,000 years waits within you, ready to rise the moment you choose to obey it. The path is ancient, but the step is yours.